For a very long time, scientists believed one strange deep water fish had disappeared completely, going extinct many tens of millions of years ago, right around the same time as many other ancient creatures vanished from the planet. Its fossils simply stopped appearing in the rocks after that point. As far as science could tell, this fish was gone forever, joining a long list of animals that once lived on Earth but exist only as old bones in stone. Then, one day, people found this same fish still alive, quietly swimming in deep ocean water, almost completely unchanged from its ancient fossil relatives. That would be like finding a dinosaur casually swimming around today, looking nearly the same as the fossils in a museum. How does an animal disappear from the fossil record for tens of millions of years, only to turn out to have been alive the entire time? Did scientists somehow miss it completely, or is something else going on here? Most people would guess this must have just been bad luck, a strange gap in the fossil record caused by pure chance. Maybe scientists simply had not searched hard enough yet, and one lucky discovery finally closed the gap. But that guess misses something important about how fossils actually form in the first place. Fossils are not created evenly everywhere on Earth. They form far more easily in shallow water, near coastlines where sand and mud settle quickly and can bury a dead animal before it fully breaks down. Deep, rocky ocean water, especially in caves and steep underwater cliffs, rarely creates the right conditions for fossils to form at all. Think about how a photograph only captures what was actually in front of the camera at that moment. If something interesting was happening just outside the picture's edge, the photograph will never show it, no matter how carefully you study that photo later. Fossils work in a similar way. They only capture life in the exact places where the right conditions happen to exist. Anything living somewhere those conditions were missing simply never gets photographed at all, in a manner of speaking, no matter how long that animal actually survived. Here is the real answer. At some point in its long history, this fish appears to have shifted its main home from shallower coastal water into much deeper water instead, tucked into caves and rocky slopes far below the surface. Once it moved into that deep, rocky world, it stopped leaving behind the kind of fossil evidence scientists usually rely on. The fish did not vanish from the world. It vanished from the fossil record, which is a very different thing. This matters because scientists were never actually studying the fish itself going silent. They were studying stone, and stone can only tell part of the story. A gap in fossils does not always mean a gap in life. Sometimes it only means an animal moved somewhere fossils simply do not form very often, and kept on living quietly, completely unnoticed for millions of years in a row. Once you understand where this fish has been hiding, its strange, ancient-looking body starts to make a lot more sense too. Instead of thin, simple fins, this fish has thick, fleshy fins that move in a slow, alternating pattern, almost like gentle steps, one after another. In the deep, calm caves where it lives, that kind of slow, steady movement works perfectly well, letting the fish hover carefully near rocky walls without wasting extra energy. Scientists have long found this stepping motion especially interesting, since it looks a little like the way a four-legged animal might slowly walk. This does not mean the fish is trying to walk on land. It still lives its whole life underwater. But the pattern hints at a very old body plan, one that later, in a completely different branch of the animal family tree, eventually helped give rise to the first limbs used for walking on land. In that sense, this fish's fins are a small, living echo of a much bigger story in the history of life on Earth. This fish also has a special sensing organ built into its snout, able to detect faint electric signals given off by other animals nearby. In water this dark, sight alone is not nearly enough. This extra sense helps the fish find food even when it cannot see very much at all, filling in exactly the kind of gap you would expect an animal living in near total darkness to eventually need to solve. Along with this special sense, the fish also has an unusually flexible skull, with a hinge partway along its head that lets its mouth open unusually wide. This helps it grab prey quickly the moment its electric sense finally locates something nearby without needing speed or sharp eyesight to close the final gap. Between sensing prey it cannot see and grabbing that prey with a wide, sudden bite. The fish has built an entire hunting system almost completely around darkness rather than trying to fight against it. Even its body's floating system looks different from most fish. Instead of a simple gas-filled pocket for floating, like many shallow water fish use, this deep-living fish relies on a long, oil-filled organ instead. Oil handles heavy underwater pressure far better than gas does, making it a much safer choice for an animal that spends its whole life deep beneath the surface, away from any sunlight at all. This same basic pattern, an animal quietly surviving somewhere scientists were not carefully watching, has shown up with a few other creatures too. Certain other species, once thought to be completely extinct based only on old fossils, have later turned up alive and well in remote or hard-to-study places tucked away from the areas scientists usually explore most closely. Each time this happens, it is a reminder that extinction can sometimes be declared a little too early, especially for animals living in places humans rarely get to see clearly. These surprising rediscoveries tend to share a few things in common. The animals involved usually live somewhere difficult for people to reach or study closely, like deep caves, remote forests, or far offshore waters. They also tend to be quiet, slow-moving, or naturally good at avoiding attention rather than bold. Obvious animals that would be hard to miss for very long. Put together, these traits create the perfect recipe for an animal that could realistically go unnoticed by science for an extremely long stretch of time, even while it continues living its life completely undisturbed. Zooming out, this whole story is a lesson about the limits of the evidence we have rather than the limits of life itself. A missing fossil record does not always mean a missing animal. Sometimes it simply means the animal found a quiet corner of the world where the usual clues never got the chance to form in the first place, leaving science to catch up, sometimes tens of millions of years later than the animal itself would have expected. So somewhere deep beneath the ocean's surface, tucked into a dark, rocky cave far from any sunlight, this ancient-looking fish hovers quietly against the stone, fins moving in slow, careful steps. It looks almost exactly like its long-lost fossil ancestors. Because for it, very little ever really needed to change. The world above simply forgot it was still there.